The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've maybe helped us on our path today.
Well, welcome to The Journey. My name is Kevin Polkey, and I am the host of The Journey. And today we are going to have a reflection. Uh, Starting at the beginning of January, uh, many of us uh, will use this opportunity for not only to reflect on 2025, but also to set goals for 2026. And there's a lot of reasons why people do this. Long-standing tradition. It's this transition from all the holiday activity toward the end of the year activity, and that at the beginning of a new year seems to be an appropriate or customary time to do this reset. Others will avoid doing any type of New Year's resolutions or goal setting because of past history of not having success of following through um, with those resolutions or goals. What I would like to talk about is what things have I found? What things have I recently been doing some research on to help us have a greater opportunity for success? Just recently, I did a workshop, a 3 hour workshop for some local therapists, and we called it Change Your Life by Changing Your Habits. And it was based on the the book by Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit, and his research regarding what would be what has he found through his research that allowed people to be successful at changing habits or changing behaviors. The premise of the book is a philosophy that all behaviors, all routines, all habits are learned. And if that is then true, that if all habits or behavioral routines are learned, then that means that they can then be not necessarily unlearned as much as they could be replaced. And that was really the essence of how to replace it. Now, there's been tons and tons of people who have focused on this particular topic, and many times it is about the energy is about extinguishing what is identified as a bad habit or a negative habit, and then the goal is just extinguishing that behavior and potentially maybe replacing it with something else or substituting something else in there. And everything through the 12 steps with AA and NA to weight loss programs to even working with a therapist, that it's been mostly focused on the elimination and then the substitution of a new behavior. One of the things that is profoundly different uh, with Duhigg's research is that he said that there's this three-step process or three identifiers in each behavioral loop or behavioral habit. The cue or the trigger, the behavior or the routine, and then what is the reward. He suggests that the cue and triggers and the reward are going to stay constant. The opportunity for change comes within that behavior. He also talks about this idea of keystone habits. In other words, a habit that can be identified as this keystone, meaning that once that behavior is changed or replaced, then it will have a ripple effect or a domino effect on other behaviors. So, for example, uh, let's say someone has a desire to have an increase endurance, be in better shape, wanting to lose a certain amount of weight, um, and be able to wear maybe clothes that are, two sizes smaller than they are currently wearing. And let's say that's the goal. For me, a particular one, looking at when are the cues. Most people who have a desire to lose weight have probably attempted a variety of different times in their life to lose weight. Many times there's patterns that there's times that they've been easier times throughout the day for them to eat what they would say is more responsible or making healthier choices. And then there's this window of time where it's more vulnerable. Let's use, for example, that a person does really well on staying on a structured eating pattern throughout the day. And then their window of time when they're most vulnerable is after dinner before they go to bed. So that time period would be one of the cues to look at. Let's say that it is also when they're watching TV or if they're bored would be another cue for them at that time period. And they have then a tendency to then gravitate back into the kitchen to then find some level of a snack, usually high in sugar or high in fat. And it's something to maybe take a handful at a time and not necessarily another meal. So the cue part or the trigger part would be based upon a particular time, in this case, after dinner, when bored, when watching TV, could also be, let's say, part of the cues. And then once starting the snacking, then it just continues to be habitual either till that snack is gone or they go to bed. What's the reward? The reward is, let's say, a break in the boredom. It may be a sense of reward for doing well all day. That may be the reward. What things can we do to replace that post-dinner snacking? And that would where we would come up with a particular types of things. Maybe if the other trigger is watching TV, that we postpone watching TV and we go for a walk after dinner or some type of light exercise or movement to delay that time period. And then maybe after going for that walk or exercise, we reward with a small amount of a snack that is structured and planned. That may be a way of replacing that behavior with still giving the reward in the window of time that is most vulnerable to be habitually snacking. Another aspect it could have is looking at a keystone part of the habit, and that may be adding in movement or exercise would have a ripple effect of possibly then making different food choices post dinner time or having some other activity while watching TV at the same time instead of just wanting to snack at that time period. Again, the idea behind Duhigg's work um, is that it's a three-part process. All habits are a three-part process of cue, trigger, the identified behavior or routine, and then the reward that we get from that behavior. looking at the cue and trigger, being able to identify that once the behavior has been identified, and then what the reward is that's tied to that cue that the person is looking for. That when we replace the behavior, that it's directly tied in just to the cue, and that it will give a similar type of reward than the old behavior that's being replaced. What I would invite you into, if you want to practice with this, either one, maybe listening to uh, The Power of Habit, the audio version, or reading the book by Duhigg, or there's numerous summaries, including a TED Talk on it, as well as just practicing some of the exercises that they have when you go to YouTube or Googling it, regarding the power of habit. But this idea of identifying a behavior that you want to replace, finding out what are your vulnerable times or the cues or what else is going on with that, why that the given behavior is chosen, and then what is then that reward. Testing certain cues to find out until you get to the right one, and then testing different behavior routines until you find one that is that's a good fit to replace the given behavior. I think one of the biggest things that I took away from his research and the workshop that I just recently did is that along with this, practicing developing discipline and that resilience will be key for that success in the end. But being able to give yourself a fighting chance by identifying those three parts of the behavioral loop, and then making sure we identify what the cue and the reward is, so that we have a greater level of success of replacing that given behavior. As always, I appreciate you being here and look forward to hearing how you are able to not only set those goals for 2026, but with discipline, with a little bit of work and research on the three-part process of changing behaviors. I look forward to hearing your success stories. As always, thank you for being here, and I look forward to being with you next week.